mind, body, and soul. The information is the goal. Try to learn something new without being distracted.
It says that the heated debates about Homo sapiens' natural way of life miss the main point. Ever since the cognitive revolution, there hasn't been a single natural way of life for sapiens. There are only cultural choices from among a bewildering palette of possibilities. So I thought that was really, because so many people are like, well, it's natural to eat this way and it's natural to be this way and it's just natural to be whatever it is. And it's like, no, actually not. This is all just like a whole bunch of different cultural choices that people made. So I thought that was an interesting point he made.
I wrote down a similar quote about what's natural and what's not natural. And it's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's opposite. Yeah. So it's on page 64. So shortly after, it says culture tends to argue that it forbids only that which is unnatural. But from a biological perspective, nothing is unnatural. A truly unnatural behavior, one that goes against the laws of nature, simply cannot exist. So it would need no prohibition. Right? Because people
what this reminds me of is the whole use of the terms or the words natural and unnatural. I find that they come out of people, whether it's intentional or not, but it's almost like a shut up statement, that by adding something on, by saying like, oh yeah, well, like this is natural, it almost kiboshes like a conversation to have any types of like curiosity or discovery, the way that I think it's absolutely, it's like, and I think that like natural can be used as a culturally manipulative mechanism.
Definitely natural. Yeah. If like someone has an opinion about something you're doing, you're like, well, it's natural. Like you should be doing it too because this is natural. And you're like, well,
or saying it's unnatural. That's just unnatural. Means that you don't belong in all of the world. Like you don't belong because you are not in nature.
I do this a lot. This conversation comes up a lot sometimes in tattoos where they're literally getting body modification done. They're getting a tattoo done. And the conversation, for whatever reason, maybe because of the clientele or where I live, moves to facial body modification, like injectables, botox, fillers, those sorts of things. And like things will shift in conversation. And I love talking about anything you can get done to yourself, so that might be why that comes up too. But like, oh, I would never do that to my face, like fill my lips full of this stuff. And it's like they're literally getting tattooed, which is really ironic, saying, but I would never do that to myself, like make my lips super big. And it's like,
it's so unnatural.
It's so unnatural looking. It's like, yeah, well, so is the highly pigmented thing we're tattooing onto you forever. So I just think it's funny how we categorize things like tattoos because they may have personal meaning to you, as like maybe I get big old double D's put in and I say like, well, this one's for my grandmother. Big titties, and this one's for my grandfather.
This is how I'm remembering
he loved
them.
my grandmother. Like whatever it is.
Titties.
Like it's so.
And they'll be together for the rest of my life.
And then now that when I squish them together, they will motorboat in heaven.
Oh my goodness,
yeah, like it's just so funny how we have to make meaning of these seemingly unnatural things, but what's natural.
And it comes back to what Lindsay was saying, is that like anything that's culture, these stories we tell ourselves where this is okay, this is not okay, is not, it came from culture, not from nature. Like how we evolved in nature.
Yes.
Which is
that's why I like what you said, Mare, because it's like it just puts that to sleep. But like it supports Lindsay's statement, because it's like if it was unnatural, it wouldn't even happen. Period. We wouldn't be able to talk about it because it would never happen.
Book interrupted.
Here's my interruption. I was making the kids caramel corn yesterday, and I had mixed it with a spoon and I pulled it out. And when I pulled it out, there was some of that melted caramel on the spoon, and I went like this to take it off, and I burnt. I should know better. I've done this. I know about caramel. I burnt the top of my mouth so badly that it blistered, and then this morning it popped, and it's so sore to eat anything. So that's my interruption. Caramel.
Book interrupted.
It shifts later in the book. I don't have a page reference, I'm sorry, but into like what we deem as human rights. Not necessarily that's natural, but it kind of is the same thing. Like these human rights that are a creation of society, we actually don't have human rights. We've decided to have these human rights, which is a really uncomfortable part of the book, because it's like a weird way of thinking. Culturally, we've developed ideas about what are our rights as humans, that, you know, that every human deserves, I don't know, a roof over their head, or I don't know, food, water, the basics, and it's not our right. And in the animal world, that is not their right.
Well, that's
even
what I was
our
gonna
ideas
say.
about how we treat animals aren't their rights.
Yeah, like that's, so reading the book, you're like, yeah, this is great. This is great. Oh yeah, I can get on board with this. Oh, totally. Like, good point.
And then
Good
it's like
point.
a
And then it
whole-
gets to the human rights and you're like, wait,
You're like,
humans, and then
Yeah.
you're challenged. But that's one of the years or the pages that I dog-eared, was the animal part, because I was like, I might have to be a vegetarian. Like, I can't
I know.
even. And
Yeah.
I knew some of
So
this stuff
uncomfortable.
already from other
I
like
knew it, but it
research
didn't-
papers, but I don't know. Like, and then just to portray us so separately, right? Like, just like as soon as we started deciding that humans have rights, but not all living things, and not we, like probably colonial, like white, like it's more, because that's another thing too. There was like a part in there that said about everybody's just looking for knowledge. That's why all this exploration occurred. And it's like, not really. Like, they were looking to go and, you know, maybe
resources,
double down on what they think is the knowledge, because they went to places that had vast knowledge that they like ignored or tried to erase. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't what they thought was knowledge, or what they're not, you know what I mean? What they were looking for.
Didn't he
But-
call it the human flood, or the flood or something, of humans like going out and taking out over all these areas, and that so many of the large, like all these large mammals that used to exist,
Oh, I love
now
that
was gonna
part,
say
though.
that-
don't exist. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that part. I was saying that, like, that really got me. Like, I've talked to other people when I was reading that part of the book, that, like, because, like, you know, I'm into environmental things and whatever, I didn't, like, I think about extinctions, and I just thought that was a modern thing. And when I was that's one of the parts of the book that, like, blew my mind. It's like, humans arrived, extinction. Humans arrived, extinction. Like, they can follow it. Like Madagascar, when humans finally arrived, all of a sudden things became extinct. Like, they can literally pinpoint mass extinctions because Homo sapiens showed up, and we just like destroyed all the major, like, the big animals. And then the sea was the only place left, and now we're in the sea. So, like, whales are starting to go extinct. So all those guys are now starting to go, because now we're in the sea, right? Now we've figured out how to, like, exploit that part now too, right? Like, that blew my mind. Like, that changed my
Did you
thinking.
love that part also from an imagination standpoint? Like, I loved hearing about all these big, preposterous mammals, like these ridiculous kangaroos that weigh 5 tons. And I was like, it was so exciting to me. I was like, I want to like draw a picture of this big fucker. Like, he's so, like, it was like, it turned into a fairy tale all of a sudden. I love imagining.
like a child, like a children's book of, like,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was
like you show up on an island with, like, the giant wombat or whatever.
The giant, yeah, like a 6-foot-long platypus. It's just like,
Yeah.
that's not practical, but okay.
It's just so interesting how good humans are creating stories to justify what we do, but how storytelling allowed us to do all those things and not feel maybe that bad about it. And this kind of circles back to our first book in this group, which was all about storytelling and how humans, you know, Women Who Run with Wolves is about how we use stories to convey ideas over, like, large generations. And he does talk about that too, is how our stories have allowed us to spread across the globe, whereas before it was just like these little, maybe 200, maximum 200 individual groups, or like groups of 200 individuals before then. But, like, when you read the book, you're like, yeah, stories are important. And then you realize that although culture is created by us, by our stories, it also shows the power of stories and the ability to change culture, even though it's like, I mean, there's so many humans, it'd be hard, but it's possible.
Yeah, just if a story takes hold, then it's a new narrative.
Even if you know that it is a fabrication, I don't think that necessarily takes the power away from the story that you believe in, because that's how we make things happen as a big group.
I would love that we could, as a whole group, change, tell a new story or change. But think about like all the stories we tell. Could we all agree on a new story? I don't know. It's hard. Like, I guess it starts in little factions and then becomes more of the mainstream. So things like money, like we're not, it's so ingrained in our culture, or corporations, or all of the things he says, that I don't think you could like just all of a sudden be like, okay, well, let's just go to a barter system and not use money or something. Like, I think
I don't think anything could happen all of a sudden with like the number of individuals that can communicate on Earth.
He made a
Nor
little
did
comment.
anything happen all of a sudden to get to where we are either.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
that's true.
Fair.
when you think about like, oh, but it would be hard to get everyone on the same page, that never happened. You know what I mean? There was never a vote that we're gonna move forward in this way or whatever, right? So, but to both of your points, there's hope. Probably like we might not see the major outcomes in our lifetime, but there's hope.
That's what's so dangerous about information and storytelling in this kind of infancy of our the internet and maybe social media, and it is stories travel so quickly now that maybe we're in such an early phase of this that's why it feels a bit dangerous now, a bit like unnerving, and why things feel really unsettled. Maybe not in our personal lives, but in a social media and social media community, it doesn't feel much like a community because it's going too quickly.
Is this the book in the beginning where he was saying how gossip served a purpose?
Yeah.
Oh, it did,
So,
yeah.
Right. So when you say that makes me think about that. Because that makes sense. Back in the day, like, you need to know which one of the tribe is killing people at night, or supposedly anyway. And then now with the social media thing and the fast information, like for some reason, I don't know where, and maybe this didn't happen, but it feels to me like somewhere along the line we lost the honesty. Like, it's as if the gossip of the old days, because it was based in survival, it was just like you would, like, it was fairly certain what you, like, it was honest or something. And now, like, my point is getting to fake news. Like, I just had a fast forward to the future. Like, what if, because stories have gotten us this far, what if we are destructing the story itself because of fake news? So now nobody believes anything, and then we're a bunch of not cooperating people or societies or whatever, because like that kind of happened with the Trump thing, right? All of a sudden you like, you can't believe anything from any source or whatever, or you feel like you can't anyways. Like, I'm sure that there are still some trusted and reliable sources, but because of that internet and the speed and the social media, anything can come out. And so if you are a critical thinker, you might be inclined to be like, well, I'm not going to believe anything because like no one's vetting this shit, and it apparently needs to be vetted because there's, I don't know, vested interests where we need to, someone's trying to change the narrative for their own personal gain, not for like survival anymore.
Back when you were in groups of 200, the gossip kind of allowed you to figure out who was lying, right? It wasn't just who's killing people in the night, supposedly, but people like, hey, that person lied to you. Yeah, they lied to me. Hey, that person's a liar. Don't trust that one person. And everybody knows that one person is a liar, and they're only looking out to further themselves. But because we can't connect with everybody, but we are connected in a superficial way with so many people without that kind of intimate connection, then that's right. Like, well, if I can't trust, let's say 2% of people, is that the number for sociopaths? Like 2% of people are sociopaths? I mean,
sounds about right.
If 2% of a population of 200 is a sociopath, then you're like, well, those 4 people, right? But if it's, 1 million people, then then there's enough people trying to disturb things, and it's really hard to figure out who's who. So who do you trust? And that's exactly what Kim is talking
Another
about.
thing that
the number of sociopaths, you know, messing things up.
Well, and a further conversation about that is sometimes sociopaths are helpful. Like you want them to be like the leader of your army or whatever, you know, like, so sometimes they make it certain places by virtue of their sociopathy.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Book Interrupted.